If you're feeling the gap in time since the previous episode of A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms was released, you're not the only one. Thankfully, we've finally been given the trailer for the upcoming episode, which is set to release back at its regular scheduled time now that the Super Bowl's done. With episode 4 coming in as the highest rated episode of the entire season so far, this new one's got a lot to live up to, but with it seeming like we're going to be diving into the past of Dunk and also looking forward to the events that are going to be unfolding during the Trial of Seven, I think this one has the potential to top it. So with that, let's take a look at the preview, and I'll also give my theories and predictions on what I think will happen next. So let's get into it. Here is A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms Episode 5 Trailer Explained. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. The trailer for the next episode opened up with us seeing a younger Dunk. This instantly highlighted that we're in for an episode where we're going to be delving into the past of Sir Duncan the Tall and maybe understanding why it is that he originally wanted to become a knight. But also, we could get a timeline of the events as to how it was that he came to be in the care of Sir Arlen of Pennytree. Flea Bottom is the location where we saw the younger Dunk, and it's a place that's considered to be the poorest and arguably the most dangerous slum district in the entirety of King's Landing. It has narrow maze-like streets, which was depicted in this scene here, and it was riddled with poverty. This episode is actually a little bit longer than some of the other ones, coming in at around 37 minutes, so it seems like the showrunners have accounted for the incorporation of the backstory to Dunk and given us an extra 5 or so minutes to make up for it, so I am quite pleased about that. The first part of the trailer saw a young Dunk looking like he was in poverty inside a Flea Bottom, but most importantly, also looking quite frightened whilst on his own. At this point, he was a child in the most dangerous slum in King's Landing, so the fear in his eyes is something that would most definitely be present. As well as that, we saw somebody watching over Dunk and his friend as they were navigating the streets. The first line of dialogue in the trailer was spoken by his friend, which could either be Pudding, Rafe or Ferret. These were known as the Little Monsters, and they were Duncan's closest friends whilst he was living in Flea Bottom. They were known as the Little Monsters because they'd get up to no good and cause terror amongst many of the people there. The person walking alongside Dunk said, "This city, it's too small for us, Dunk. Let's go someplace else." This was then intercut with a scene of 2 horses navigating an open field and Dunk looking cold and afraid whilst staying in the forest during the night. This showed that his friend was one of the main reasons as to why he eventually left Flea Bottom, and the strength that Dunk acquired at a young age could have come from the fact that he was not only born and raised in the slum, but he ventured off on his own. The words, "Don't lose your nerve now," was echoing as they were over a singular candle, and those words are important because they're applicable to the event that he's about to go into in the present day in the Trial of Seven. Dunk has to hold his nerve if he's hoping to come out victorious, so I imagine we could be getting shown this flashback because Dunk could quite literally have his life flashing before his eyes as he's said to be facing Aerion and fighting to the death. There was then a scene of Dunk with a knight's helmet in his hand when he was younger, and I believe this symbolized the length of time and the journey that it's taken Dunk to truly be in this position where he's a knight on the battlefield, albeit not in the situation that he'd want to be in. This shot also connected to the dialogue where he was told, "Don't lose your nerve," because as he put the helmet on, it transitioned to him with it on in the present day preparing to fight. This was also where we saw the shot of the accused 7 all on their horses and preparing to fight. Seeing Lionel Baratheon with the antlers coming out of his helmet looked epic, and with his armor being gold as well, he looked so menacing and almost nightmarish when compared to the others. But as well, we also saw Raymond that was there and Baelor Targaryen alongside Dunk in the center. The speaker of the Trial of Seven delivered a speech which was, "May the 7 bear witness to our solemn and bloody offering. May they reveal the guilty in their falseness and find the truth. May the warrior grant victory to the innocent." As this was said, it was intercut with a wide array of shots. The first that we had was of Aerion and his 7 being given their lances, and we also saw that Egg was sitting in the stand and looking on with a look of anger and disappointment in his eyes. I think in this instance he's going to be looking over at Aerion. As we know, he doesn't care for his brother in the slightest, and he wants Duncan to slay him, so that emotion is going to be presented towards him. As well as that, I feel like that's the position on the ground where Aerion and his 6 will be. There was then a shot of Aerion preparing to fight as he pulled down the front of his helmet, and that was then accompanied by Lionel Baratheon and Baelor Targaryen preparing too. Baelor was on his horse, which is described as a huge black destrier, which is a warhorse, and it's definitely giving that impression when looking at it. The horses, all shrieking and looking disgruntled, was giving off a sign of restlessness, and it brought to light the tension that was present on both sides of the battlefield. The mist and fog also leaned into that too, so at this point in the trailer, it was setting the scene perfectly. There was a shot of Maekar with his mace, which is something that's going to prove to be a weapon of great importance in the Trial of Seven. If you don't want to know what happens in the novel, then skip to the timestamp on screen. Okay. Within the Trial of Seven, Maekar actually ends up delivering a fatal blow with his mace to his brother Baelor Targaryen, which ends up being the reason as to why he dies, and it's an action that Maekar lives with and regrets for the remainder of his life. This apparently also all unfolded just due to the chaos of the battle. So the importance of us seeing Maekar waving the mace around in the trailer is for that exact reason. With the next shot also being Baelor Targaryen giving a speech to the Six and saying, "Be vigilant, don't die." That was perfectly placed there for that exact reason, because he does end up dying. This was then followed by quite a funny shot, which was of Sir Duncan the Tall vomiting because he was frightened and nervous for the battle to begin, and also the prospect of death. But in the background, if you look, it also showed Sir Raymond Fossaway throwing up because he was nervous too, and I'm not surprised. A few minutes ago, he wasn't stepping into the battlefield, and there he now was, preparing to give his life. There was then a quick succession of shots on the battlefield, plus there was one of Dunk just frozen, looking through the gap in his helmet, and that very fear that we saw in his eyes when he was curled up by the tree when he was younger was present there. So I wonder if in this instance, Dunk could end up being paralysed with fear and frozen solid, as others have charged forward, and that could end up being why Egg ultimately screamed "Go" at Dunk from the stands. As Dunk then charged forward, we saw the camera cut from being directly behind him to it then transitioning to a point of view shot through his helmet, and it was absolutely gorgeous. So I'm hoping we're going to get some good camera movements and cinematography as the episode unfolds. If there's one thing Game of Thrones knows how to do well, it's the battle scenes, and I feel like we could end up getting Game of Thrones delivering some of their finest in this episode. Then from there, with the dramatic transition into the helmet, the trailer came to an end. Whilst it seems like there was a lot of action in this next episode, based on the trailer, I have a feeling that the show could be leading us up the garden path, and it'll mainly be centered around the flashback and the beginning of the battle. What Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon have traditionally done is have the penultimate episode as the one where most of the action occurs, and I don't see why the show would do any different this time round. We're at a point in the story where I think it would provide a lot of value to allow us to see Dunk's backstory and how he survived the rough streets of Flea Bottom, dreamed big, wanted more, and then found himself in the guidance of Sir Arlan of Pennytree, and now is a knight. I think the episode could end up concluding just as the action begins, and do you know what? Personally, I don't actually mind that. As long as I know the action's on the way, I'm a happy man. So, there you have it, A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms Episode 5 trailer explained. If you want to see more videos on A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, then check the playlist below, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future videos. What do you think will happen next? Share your thoughts in the comments. As always, thanks for tuning into the video, and I'll see you in the next one.